Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm picking up on a kind of magical energy right now, which could just be the subtle feeling of magic that's been going on for you recently, or it could be that something happening in your life right now is very magical, but maybe you don't understand exactly how it is, but looking back on it or on a chain of events, you'll understand how magic came to be a part of it. Alright, so we have the Emperor at the bottom of the deck. So there is this feeling like this is kind of like a distant future for you. Is like, I think this magic is relating to you claiming the throne. And maybe it's not even so distant, but it's like, it's almost like a few steps ahead of you. Like you can't see exactly the pathway to getting to that point, but it's like maybe you have recognized a certain vision of your life for what your life will look like when you're in this Emperor energy of like being the ruler of yourself, and this really strong feeling of understanding like a sense of purpose or a sense of leadership in your life as well. And let's split the deck. Okay, we have the moon, so there's definitely this feeling of something being hidden from you right now, or maybe you have been feeling a strong connection to certain moon deities, like maybe like Diana or Hecate, or just this feeling of being outside a lot under the moon could be relevant to you, and also feelings of shadow integration might be important, and not so much in the sense of shadow work in the way that people often talk about it, of like writing in your journal about what your shadow is exactly. Like I feel like that's kind of beginner, like basic level 1, and I feel like you're already way past that point, and I think you're at the point of fully integrating your shadow, so it's not just like you're figuring out what your shadow is and like talking to it, but it's more like you understand the full spectrum of things, like you understand a lot of your shadow traits so that you can pick anything on the full spectrum of like what you had as your ego or persona trait and what you had as your shadow trait. It's like not picking between them, but picking from the full spectrum of everything in between, depending on what the situation calls for. And I feel like this is something that is very much essential to your ascension to the Emperor spot. Is like you need to be very malleable in some ways, or be able to conform to a given situation. And this is not to say that you don't have a core sense of self. Like, you do still have this kind of core personality, or like an understanding of a comfortability of being in your body and being in your mind, of kind of understanding that you are the ruler of that domain. But I think when it comes to the external world, you're understanding how there's ways that you can shift yourself a little bit, like shape shifting is what I'm getting, in order to get the best possible outcome of the situation. Alright, well, let's draw some cards. What's going on for you? Okay, we have the Three of Pentacles. Alright, we have the Four of Swords in reverse. Alright, we have the High Priestess. So there is this feeling of there's something quite spiritual going on here. Like, as you can see with this is taking place in a cathedral on the Three of Pentacles here, and we have this monk figure, and there is this feeling of the Gothic cathedral, this motif here as being a very important symbol in the occult of like a symbol that you could meditate on. And then of course with the Four of Swords here is taking place in a sort of church, like you have the stained glass, and then this is kind of like a knight's tomb, but it also always reminds me of like a saint's tomb where the saint's body is on display. And then the High Priestess, of course, she's holding a holy book, and then she's a priestess. So there is this feeling that you are commanding some sort of magical energy where, like I mentioned, there were some things that might not be revealed to you right now with the Moon card coming through, but at the same time, I feel like you are in possession of many secrets or occult mysteries, as signified by the High Priestess card here. And the Moon is also appearing here on her card. So there is just a sense of things that you might have discovered along the way, where it's almost like this is magical. It's like opening up new doors for you, where it's like things that you have learned in your studies, maybe reading certain books on spirituality, have now opened new doors for you, where it's like every time you feel like, okay, I've learned all there is to learn about this world, about the occult, about spirituality, it's like a new door opens and you reach this higher level of understanding where it's like you had to kind of have cleared the whole level. So like I'm kind of getting that from like a video game of like level completed, and then you're unlocking new abilities as you move to the next level, where you couldn't have known anything about any of the following levels while you were on one of the lower levels, right? So you kind of think that that's it, but then as soon as you open that door, it's like so much new information or new powers are being revealed to you. And I'm getting the sense of a feeling of working with different aspects of yourself. Like I mentioned about being able to choose who to be in a given situation in order to maximize like the efficiency or the outcome of that situation. Like that's kind of the sense I'm getting with this Three of Pentacles card here as well. Is like being able to work with different aspects of yourself when you're working on a specific project or on a situation where, like, as you can see coming together, we have like the artisan and then we have the monk. And then I still don't know who this character is supposed to be. Like I presume it's like a nobleman or maybe a jester. It's kind of a strange cloak. So there's this feeling of like if you had to work on a project where it required these different sides of yourself, like something more creative, something more spiritual, and something who's like really good at executing a vision, or like the one having a vision, and it's like you understand how all these roles are played and you can play each of these roles when you need to, where like sometimes people have this feeling of like, oh, I'm an artist, so therefore I lack these skills to be able to execute a project in a timely manner or in an efficient way or in a cost-effective way, or being able to manage your finances, that sort of thing. But in reality, when you fully become integrated in your personality, you do have all these sides of yourself. You're not just one thing, where if you needed to switch on your like money-minded side of yourself, where like if you were negotiating a contract, you wouldn't necessarily have to lean into that side of like, oh, I'm just a sad little artist, I don't know all this legal financial stuff, and get taken advantage of. No, like you can switch on that side of yourself that is like, okay, I'm gonna fight for my rate that I need to get paid. I'm going to read through this contract and really understand it. And it's just about shifting into that kind of different state. And then it's like, okay, well, now it's time to make the art, and you're gonna like shift back to it and put those different versions of yourself in the hot seat, so to speak, of like, okay, this is kind of who's in control, like the character you're playing for now. And it doesn't necessarily feel like you're betraying yourself or being not true to yourself. Like you're still being true to yourself, you're still expressing your personality, no matter what side of your personality you're showing to the world. Like you'll always say the things that you would say. It's not like you're putting on an act or putting on a show. Like it is still very true to your core, but it is just a technique that will enable you to better navigate the world in some ways. And this is one of the powers that you might have unlocked as you went through this process of ascending to different levels. And it's really not something to be afraid of. It's really about unlocking your fullest potential. And with the Four of Swords in reverse here, the sense I'm getting is like, it could have felt like you were in a period of rest before, and maybe you're kind of moving out of that now, where maybe you don't need as much rest as you needed previously, where like I feel like there could have been this time very recently for you where you just felt very exhausted by life, of just like, okay, like you don't have any energy for anything, and just maybe needing more sleep and more rest than usual. But the sense that I'm getting is you're moving out of that phase of your life where like that was really important for you, and you're still learning how to balance how much rest you need with how much mental and physical activity you can take. But the sense that I'm getting is like you're kind of ready to spring up out of bed and like move on to doing something in the world. And definitely the sense that I'm getting is you have this kind of inner kingdom within you, right? Like the kingdom of God is within you, is the sense that I'm getting, where even though these cards kind of all relate in some ways to these images that look like religious institutions, right? Like we have like these pillars here that are very institutional, and then we have the actual cathedral, and then a church here with a stained glass, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be going to these places to be able to connect with that magical side of things. It's like that magic is within you at all times, right? Like any sort of temple in the outside world is only a symbolic representation of the temple that is your body and mind, right? Like it's physically within you, right? And some people might try to argue the opposite. If they're really trying to sell you on a certain religion, they may say, like, no, you need to devote yourself to this historic tradition, or go to this physical place, or give a certain amount of your income to the church, and that sort of thing. But really, this is not the case. Like, the magic about God and the universe is that God exists in everything, and that means God exists in all of us, so that if we wanted to tap into some magical powers, we don't actually need anything external to us. And like I mentioned, there might be things where you're learning new information that is being revealed to you, like with this High Priestess card, and so that could come to you in the form of books or perhaps sermons that you might hear at a religious institution. But this is just because that information was going to come to you in any way that it was possible. It doesn't necessarily mean that the only way to get that information is through listening to someone read the Bible, or through reading a holy book yourself, right? Like, that's just because those are the means that we have available to us now that the printing press was invented. Or like, you might be reading ebooks online too, right? Where like, if we had lived in a time before books had existed, maybe this information would have been relayed to you verbally, or it could have been relayed to you in a vision. But I mean, it could still be being relayed to you in a vision in some ways. But the sense that I'm getting is like, it doesn't really matter how this information comes to you, it will reach you anyway. So you really don't need to worry about pursuing or tracking down any information, or going to any specific sources, or any sort of religious authority or spiritual authority. Like, the information is going to reach you anyway. All right, and then we have the Hermit and the King of Pentacles in reverse coming out here. So the sense I'm getting is some of this magic could have been taking place in this period of isolation, where I feel like sometimes being around other people can almost dull your magic at sometimes, right? There is kind of a reason why the sorcerer symbol is often associated with like being a wizard in a tower, and it's like you're quite isolated from society. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always be isolated from society. Like, I'm sure you still have many friends and that sort of thing, but like I mentioned, it's about like switching on different sides of yourself, right? Where sometimes you might want to switch into the hermit side of yourself in order to harness some of this magical energy, where being around other people can sometimes dull that energy, because it can kind of send you messages about who you should be, like that's just the current ideology of the times. And when you get to a certain point in your spiritual development, like I mentioned with these levels that you're reaching, right, there's a point where this no longer affects you, where you can have a conversation with someone and not be affected by what they're saying or any sort of projections that they're sending towards you. But I feel like maybe when you're earlier on the journey, sometimes these periods of isolation are incredibly important, because you are so open and absorbing things from other people. And this is a really good thing, because it usually means you have really a high sense of empathy, or you have some level of psychic powers of being able to pick up on other people's energy. So you could read people really easily, like almost reading their minds is what I'm getting. But this is where it could be really a lot to take in when you're kind of at this point in your journey, where it's just like a lot of information. It could be kind of confusing. Like, you could have these feelings where, like, when you interact with certain people, you come home and you're still carrying that energy with you. So until you learn how to set those energetic boundaries, sometimes this hermit mode becomes far more important. But at the same time, I think it's kind of something that you can switch into at any point in your journey and still get something out of it. But I feel like especially at this time of learning how to set boundaries, or really stepping into your emperor seat, is like you want to be on your own for a little bit for this. But that doesn't necessarily mean it even has to be like a long, unbroken period of isolation. It could just look like being able to carve out some of that quality time alone, just so that you can have that peace of mind or quietude of mind where there's no one else talking to you. And this could even include like watching YouTube videos of like not having any sort of external factors in your present environment, where it's like you're just sitting there with yourself. And I feel like this is something that can be very empowering and really help you on your journey. And with the King of Pentacles coming out in reverse here, there is a sense of maybe feelings of like material instability for you in some ways, or kind of like worrying about what is going to come next. Like, the sense that I'm getting is that your material reality will be shifting in the coming future, like in the short term, or just in the next steps of your journey. And this could be something that could be a little bit concerning to you because you do have these feelings of like, yeah, like unpredictability. You don't know what's coming next. But I feel like you're really being advised at this time to lean into the instability of it and embrace the change. And that change in your material conditions is not always a bad thing. And it's not always a good thing either. Sometimes it just happens. It doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad. Like, sometimes when we move cities, there's this feeling of like, okay, I liked my old city, but I like this new city. It doesn't necessarily have to be that one is better than the other. It's just like the change happened and it just is. So that's kind of the sense I'm getting with this King of Pentacles, is like there is this feeling of like, yeah, like something about your material reality is going to change, and it's like not getting too nervous about it or trying to fight this, because this could be what could be holding you back, or that could lead to feelings of exhaustion, but just a feeling of embracing the change and being willing to see what this change could be. Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like an increase in wealth. Like, sometimes almost a decrease in material possessions can be a good thing. Like, there's many people in their journeys where they have a lot of things around them and it almost starts to feel like a burden. And when they let go of these things and live a lifestyle that maybe isn't so dependent on just the material possessions that they have, they almost feel more empowered or more wealthy in a way. And so definitely there is a feeling of being able to harness material reality, but this doesn't always necessarily have to mean just being wealthy or rich or having a lot of things. Like, sometimes being in the King of Pentacles energy of really feeling in control of your material reality could just mean like your physical shelter is something that resembles what you really want in your innermost sense of self. And this doesn't have to be anything too fancy. Like, this could be a very simple log cabin that you've built with your own two hands. And even though it isn't a $5 million home, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're more in control or less in control of your material reality. It's just a matter of really aligning with what you want. And that's why sometimes this energy or the instability of it can sometimes feel a little bit concerning or anxiety inducing. It's just the change of it, and like learning to release some of those judgments about like which is better. It's just understanding what exactly you want. All right, we have the Queen of Pentacles coming out here too, so that's like a bit of a counterpart. And we have on this card, there's like a little bunny, which is so cute. So maybe like you've been having some feelings about the passage of time lately. And the sense I'm getting is also with the white rabbit. Like, he's always running late, right? And then he lures Alice down the rabbit hole. And this is kind of a similar feeling that I was getting with this High Priestess card about like these different layers or different levels of reality or of magic. And it's almost like you're being sent down this rabbit hole, and then you go down another rabbit hole, and then you go down another, and it's like you're like Alice, and you just keep falling and falling and getting yourself into trouble and meeting interesting people and going on these adventures. But it's almost like the passage of time doesn't necessarily have to be in accordance with these adventures or rabbit holes that you're going down, right? Where sometimes there's this feeling like things take time to execute, but this is kind of the magic of it, is that you can really take advantage of time in a way that doesn't always happen to be in accordance with what you might have been taught, where people might have told you that it takes a really long time to affect any sort of change in your life. And maybe on some levels this could be true. Like, if you were literally building a house, with your own two hands, you could count out the exact amount of hours that it would take to build this, right? But sometimes magical things happen where you might have expected to build something with your own two hands, but then maybe some magic comes your way that gives you people who are professional builders, and maybe it gives you the means to pay them or somehow contract them in some way. And then this project that you might have thought was going to take you 5 years to do with your own two hands, and that you had really thought it would take 5 years to do, could be done in a matter of a few months. And it's like, this is where the magic comes in, is that sometimes when you are manifesting something or simply bringing something into your reality, it can come into your reality in a way that you didn't fully expect, and this can kind of accelerate the timeline of things for you. And then also with some of these rabbit holes, where like I mentioned, of like going through different levels or acquiring new information, these also could be something that you thought of in like a long-term sort of idea of like, maybe you thought mastery of a skill, right, maybe was corresponding to this university level education sort of mindset of like, okay, it takes 4 years to learn something, or it takes this many books that you need to study to learn something. And while this could be true to get like a certain level of knowledge in certain skills, I feel like some of these rabbit holes you're going down specifically that really relate to you personally and relate to your magical spiritual journey are things that can't necessarily be quantified in that sort of time or that sort of very linear perspective, where like sometimes you could be going down a rabbit hole that could take you a year or longer, and then sometimes it can get to this accelerated point where it feels like almost like new adventures are happening every day, and it's kind of has this variability about it where it's sometimes it's a longer adventure, like this I'm getting the sense of like the hero's journey where I'm seeing the circle where it's like the top part is like in normal reality and then you're like crossing into the abyss. And so sometimes I'm getting a sense of like sometimes it does take a year or more to complete these journeys, but sometimes you're going through these whole journeys in like a day. And this also corresponds to the major arcana, or the path of the fool in the tarot could be seen as a sort of hero's journey. And so it's like you could be going through the whole pathway of the major arcana in a very accelerated way, where like even just from my own personal experience, like when I first started learning tarot, I tried to correspond the major arcana to my own personal journey. And it even got to a point where I had to stop and like, okay, I'm not at this point in my journey yet. I have to wait a few months, come back to it, and then I'll have accomplished the next step in it, right? But now that I've gone through that journey once already, right, I'm starting to see how these cycles can repeat over and over, and it can actually get quite fast and like bunny rabbit speed, right? So the sense that I'm getting is to look at your journey as something that is not so linear or not so like measurable, where if you're trying to put any time constraints on yourself, it's almost like this could be really limiting in some ways, where like if you're putting too much pressure on something to happen by a certain date, this could be limiting to you because it could just cause frustration that's actually blocking your manifestation from coming true. But then the reverse is also true, where you might have certain expectations about timelines that are actually way longer than the thing could reasonably take, where if you truly had some sort of faith, then this thing could come true for you in a matter of days or even minutes. All right, the Knight of Pentacles coming out. So 3 pentacles in a row. There's this sense of this feeling of, yeah, definitely some sort of mastery over the material world is very present in your life right now. And it's almost this feeling of stability is what I'm getting, where definitely there's a sense of being fed this feeling of instability from the external world on some level, right? Especially if you're someone who pays rent, there's this kind of feeling of like not knowing where you're going to be month to month. Or sometimes if you are someone who reads the news, like there's these stories about like, okay, the government's about to collapse, like this doomsday prophesizing kind of feeling, right? But this is something that's been going on forever, right? They've always been prophesizing the doomsday for millennia. So it's not like something you actually have to worry about, but it definitely is this feeling of instability. It might be something that you would have been fighting against for a long time. And then I think something magical is that you found this sense of stability inside yourself that then almost kind of guaranteed you a sense of material stability, where even if someone who was maybe from a different mindset might analyze your material reality at present and try to tell you that you're living a very unstable life, I feel like you have a sense of security within yourself, where you understand that no matter what, you are secure. Like it doesn't matter about how much money you have in your bank account or what type of job you have or anything like that. It's almost like the security is just automatic. Where like, you could have some sort of miracle windfall that is going to save you at the last moment, or that always does save you at the last moment. Like this feeling of like just always having enough money in the bank, like it's never something you actually had to worry about, even if people try to tell you to worry about it. And then maybe when you fall into that anxiety of like getting kind of worried about it and starting to like penny pinch and really freak out, like picking up extra shifts all the time because you're worried that you're not going to make rent, then those are when you have those kind of close calls or this feeling of like, oh, I can't afford something. But when you kind of forget about it, almost put it on the back burner and just take it for granted that you're always going to make ends meet, then it becomes something that you don't have to worry about. And then all of a sudden, you are having a lot more income through just mysterious means that you might have not predicted in the past, or might have not seen present in your previous reality when you were living in this more anxious, internally unstable feeling. And the sense that I'm getting is also that you have some sort of stability in your material reality, even if you don't have these markers of stability that people might be trying to enforce in you. Of, like I mentioned, of like your living situation. I get the sense that even if you were living in more of a nomadic lifestyle where you could be called homeless, like I'm getting the sense that you would still feel a sense of stability in the material world. It's like you're being taken care of, where things are just going to work out for you. Like you are still going to have shelter. Like all those essential things that you need met are going to be met for you. Like all your needs will be met. And that's really the sense that I'm getting, especially moving into this next phase of your life where you really feel empowered in yourself. All right, let's draw a couple more cards to close out this reading. See if there's any advice for you. Okay, we're getting the Devil upside down, so in reverse. Gotta be fancy with it. Okay, so the sense I'm getting is that you're overcoming this devil energy in a very strong way, like in a way that maybe you didn't think you'd ever be able to, because really this devil energy is something that is something that we fight a battle with for most of our lives, for some people their whole lives. But if you are reaching this point in your spiritual journey that I'm talking about, right, it could have been that you have finally understood how to overcome this energy. And this energy could be associated with ego identification, or with negative projections, or of like poisoning your reality with a negative mentality, essentially, where it's almost like this pessimism that then brings in negative experiences for you, where like if you're having constantly negative thoughts about someone, about like this person's a bad person, they're gossiping about me, they hate me, or like replaying scenarios in your head, or playing imaginary scenarios in your head where you're fighting with someone, then you'll notice when you encounter that person, it just has this antagonistic feeling in the dynamic. So I think you're starting to understand that by overcoming this devil energy and disciplining your own thoughts and your own mentality and your own perspective, it actually starts to shift reality in this really magical way, where even these people who you had previously kind of been at odds with, as soon as you start to cultivate these positive thoughts, these empathetic thoughts, just really optimistic feelings of like things are gonna work out, there's no reason to fight, like this person likes me, there's no reason to hate me, all of that kind of more positive thinking, right? Then things in your reality actually conform to fit that belief that you hold. And this is like something very magical, I think, that you might be experiencing. And this is really how you're overcoming the devil, where it's like this feeling of like, okay, like people sometimes think of the devil as external to them. Like there is this goat-looking creature sitting in the depths of hell, just whipping people and making bad things happen in your life. But really, this is just a symbol for something that exists within you, right? Where you are becoming the devil by bringing these painful experiences into your reality, where this is something you choose to do. Like I mentioned, you can kind of choose to exist in different states whenever you would like, and sometimes this is the state that you choose to exist in. And people might claim like, oh no, why would anyone want to do that? But I think if you've reached this point in your spiritual journey, you're understanding how tempting it is, and that is why they call it temptation, of course, like the devil's temptation, where it just almost becomes this automatic kind of a coping mechanism, or just a force of habit to imagine the worst. And particularly, like I mentioned, there's this feeling of like almost being indoctrinated in some ways by the people around you to imagine the worst, of like this devil energy of like people in your life might have taught you like everyone's out to get you because of XYZ, and it could have been like because of your race, because of your gender, because of your class status, because of just any sort of aspect about you, or financially. Like I mentioned, there's like this feeling of like the banks are trying to get you, and they're gonna make you poor and homeless, and you're gonna lose all your money and not have anything, right? Like all of this like kind of negative spiraling energy you might have picked up on at some point in your life, and this is essentially what infected you with the devil. And it like on some ways, like, people might argue, okay, it's just being pragmatic, it's just being realistic. But what they don't understand is that these idle thoughts, this constant chatter that's going on in our head, is actually creating the reality around us. Because what we perceive within ourselves, we perceive outside in the world. So if you're perceiving only this devil energy within yourself, that is what you're going to perceive in the world too. And these experiences are going to confirm it to you, where it feels like you're being punished by the devil, but you must understand that it originates within yourself first. And this is not to blame anyone, like, it's not victim blaming, right? Like, sometimes genuinely, like, a bad thing can just happen. Like, there's like, you can call it bad, but maybe it's going to be a learning experience for you, and it's going to show you that that was actually something essential to you, that taught you a lesson that you needed to know in order to bring something into reality that was part of your life's purpose. But when it comes to your day-to-day experience, where it feels like you're just being stabbed by pitchforks day after day, it's like understanding that you can get out of this energy through the power of your mind and through getting into your body. And it does, like, it is genuinely magical, where you might not believe it. And especially if you're someone who's been taught to wallow in self-pity and hold a victim mentality, it almost just feels like that's just natural, or that's just the way things are. But I think you're starting to understand that things don't have to be that way, and you can break out of it whenever you would like. All right, we have the Chariot. So definitely there is this feeling of moving forward. So this is kind of the sense that I'm getting, is that you are moving onward and upward, but at the same time, you actually haven't reached the end of your journey, because in some ways the Chariot also represents a kind of sense of immaturity in some ways, where, like, yes, you are elevated and yes, you are being carried forward, but that does not mean that the journey is over. So it is constantly this humbling factor of understanding that you have not reached the end of the path. You do not know all there is to know. You are not as powerful as you could be. And even if you feel like you've mastered certain skills or certain belief systems or ways of thinking, that there's always more ahead of you, and there are always mysteries that could never be solved. Like, the essential mysteries of life cannot be reasoned out logically, put into words, or understood by the human mind. So there is a sense that you are constantly shifting between different polarities, and like I mentioned, with this feeling of shadow integration, of the light and dark, of like what is seen and what is unseen, and this unison of opposites. The union of opposites that you're bringing together is like granting you this new power of this kind of balance of, like, you're not leaning towards any side. It's almost like you're spinning like a top, and I'm getting the sense of like the perpetual spinning top from Inception. It's kind of the sense, but it's like, it's understanding that you exist somewhere on the spectrum, and you're able to choose what you're expressing from this whole spectrum at any time. And this is kind of what drives you forward, where it's like, if you leaned into any one side too strongly or too permanently, like I mentioned, of like this devil energy, or even like maybe leaning into like only wanting to talk about these spiritual occult things that are hidden from the general public, then it's almost like that's kind of steering you off the path a little bit. And similarly, it can also go the other way, where it's like, if you don't acknowledge the spiritual world and you only want to live in like the broad daylight of reality, or you could be shifting too much into like this feeling of I don't know, like love and light, where you refuse to see the dark aspects of yourself or acknowledge that that exists within you. Like, similarly, this is kind of throwing you off your path, but it's when you have that feeling of balance that you can continue moving forward. Otherwise, it's like trying to drive a wheel where it's like trying to drive a car where the left wheels are both missing or the right wheels are both missing. It's like you need all four wheels to keep going forward. So it's like finding this balance. All right, and then at the bottom of the deck, oh, we got the Moon card again. So there definitely is this feeling of being around at night is probably very significant to you right now. Like, when things are quiet, and it's also with this Hermit energy is what I'm getting, and the High Priestess energy as well, is like, when things are quiet and still is when this magic is happening for you. Like, it could be a lot harder for you right now to be executing your magic in a crowd of people, or even in a group setting, but it's like when you're in a just in communion with yourself, like, you're able to just talk to yourself freely, where like sometimes if you're around other people, it's almost like you have to not dumb it down, but just you have to talk to them in a way that they'll understand. But when you spend time by yourself, you can talk to yourself in a language that only you understand, and this language is essentially the language of magic, and this is what creates this change in your life, these magical changes. And the sense that I'm getting is that there is kinship coming in for you, though, where you might be meeting someone or having a close relationship with someone who's kind of like your counterpart, in the sense of someone who you're able to talk to as if they were yourself. And maybe you've even met this person in the past and maybe they're coming back into your life, or this could be a new person who you're having this relationship with. But the sense that I'm getting is like this magical practice you're doing could be attracting that kind of relationship. But again, it is just about staying in that state and continuing to work your magic and follow your intuition, as always. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got something out of it. Please let me know if it resonated at all. And if you're interested in a customized reading, please send me an email and I will record you a personalized reading for the price of $25 USD. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.